Hello, everyone. Welcome to BowTieSecurityGuy After Dark. Just get this out of the way. The opinions that you hear are those of the host and the guest, not of our employees, our clients, or anyone else who may work with us in the future. With me today is Erich Orwig, and I invited him on because he has a pretty interesting story on how he kind of got into cyber. Eric, tell us a little bit about yourself.
First, it's a pleasure to be here. Where do I begin? Because I've worked so many industry verticals up to this point. If my joke actually is that I would be a perfect resume for the mafia because my first job out of college involved bioscience, so cutting up dead bodies. Then I moved on into pharmaceuticals, where I was a legal drug dealer as a still licensed in Colorado as a pharmacy technician. And then now I'm in cyber, so an ethical hacker, if you will.
I kind of love that. And that's one thing I noticed on your resume now. I obviously didn't realize the original job, and I'm way too curious. So explain that a little bit. So you worked with cadavers, and what was it, like a research type thing? Tell me more.
So we would get them after the morgue. Usually, so if you end up putting on your ID that you want to be an organ donor, sometimes that can mean science. Sometimes that can mean, hey, I have a good heart. Take it out of me, put it in someone who needs it, that sort of thing. My side was mock surgery. So we would prepare bodies because you can never sell body parts. That's illegal. What you can do is sell the service of preparing the bodies so that uh, if somebody needs an actual skeleton wired up for display purposes, we would take a body, we would throw it in a it sounds awful, but it is what it is. We'd throw it in a dumpster with a bunch of scarabs who would eat it, and it's called debreeding. Debride all the bones, then we'd wire up the bones into your little standing skeleton, and those would get shipped out for however long they were needed. We did stuff like that. We did mock surgery. So I'd separate different parts from a donor, and if a surgeon wanted to practice with a brand new knee, you'd rather them practice on a dead guy than a living one. So that was a lot of the stuff that I did. I'm very good at gift wrapping now, so
I find that absolutely fascinating. It's kind of a perfect timing for being in spooky season with Halloween right on the corner. So I love that we've already started off on a weird note. This is going to be a fun one. So I mean, you were in pharmaceuticals, which is arguably a well-paying job with very good hours, um, very lax
nothing
type
like my
gigs.
wife. She's a doctor of pharmacy. I was a pharmacy
Yeah.
technician. That's uh, I'm not comparable to a nurse, but in the sense that I help my doctor do their job, that's where I can draw that connection. I still, if I were a pharmacy tech now, I'd be a vaccinator. I'd be responsible for accidentally poisoning people or doing improper ratios. So a lot of fractions in that job. And it does not pay nearly what you'd think it does. I topped
Really?
out at 7 years at $19.40 an hour, and that was retail. If I went into a hospital, um, there are higher stakes, a little bit higher pay, but for reference, I
Wow.
now make as much as my wife does. Cyber was, and I don't have the massive crippling student debt that she has. So
I mean, that's fascinating to me. So, I mean, I would think, I mean, you could basically make almost that as a barista now. I mean, Starbucks pays close to that. That's wild. And did you go to school for that, or did you like how did you get into that field?
So my first degree, because I have two, was in chemistry. I did that to prove a point. Don't recommend it unless you want to go into research, because unless you have a master's or a doctorate, there are no jobs in chemistry whatsoever. Um, I over knew what I needed to be a pharmacy technician. I went in, took my pharmacy tech test within the first week of me having that job and passed it. That is not normal for the industry. Normally, you're on the job for 9 months before you take the first test, and it does not have a high pass rate. Honestly, I've taken the CISSP. It's a hard test. The pharmacy technician certification was a harder test.
Wow.
You
Yeah.
had to know law, you had to know logarithmic math, you had to know fractions. On top of you had to memorize. All drugs have multiple names. So you have the brand name, the generic, and then you have to know what they're useful for. The top 100 drugs, you had to know all of that.
Wow, that's insane. That's wow.
Yeah, it
All right,
is.
interesting. I would argue though that a lot of these things have helped prepare you for like a job in cyber though, right? I mean that being able to learn a lot of different things, memorizing different things,
I mean,
obsessing over
sure.
the small details is kind of what we do. When was how did you make a pivot from pharmacy tech to cyber professional? And how long did it take you to kind of get from there? How long did you try to get into like land your first cyber gig?
So I made my transition at a perfect time. So it I have a lot of good luck, good fortune, good timing that was on my side. Um, to phrase a cyber position, according to the ISC Squared Council, because I had to petition them for my CISSP, I was able to convince them that pharmaceutical compliance, HIPAA compliance in particular, is directly related to what we do in cyber. And it's pretty hard to argue that. I had to do data protection, data entry, stuff like that as a pharmacy technician. And that included physical security. We had to lock up the pharmacy all the time. It's it's however you can spin it. As far as was that technical cyber stuff, I would argue no, with the exception of like troubleshooting my Linux point of sale systems, because somebody wouldn't get out to us for a week. So, and I was a pro gamer, so I'm used to a lot of the other security systems because well, people would try and DDoS me offline. So I had a friend who um, had a CrowdStrike partnership and we could sinkhole DOS attempts. I found the easiest thing and the cheapest solution was having two ISPs. So when somebody knocked me off of one, I'd switch over to the other. And that made it easy for me to be a pro gamer and get this going. But back to cyber, coming from pharmacy, there was a gap. And that little gap, I actually made my own company. And this is where I got very technical very quickly. So I ended up making a car parts company where I had 14 million unique car part SKUs. I was able to set up a network of warehouses. It was drop ship, but with a lot of extra steps, is basically how this ended up being. Um, where I had over 80 warehouses, 3 countries, shipping 14 million car parts globally. I had to have a very specifically tailored and PCI DSS compliant web front. I had to integrate with 10 different channels. So I ended up having to have a piece of code, channel spider, ended up making the base of that. But I had to do software development kits to be able to hook up all the back ends so that I had live inventory, live pricing. And I did a lot of stuff that was business shortcuts to make sure it worked. And in hindsight, it was horrible because I had regular FTP going because that was the only option. I had all sorts of, in hindsight, cyber flaws that I'm glad I pulled the plug on that company when I did. Um, But um, yeah, my database was huge. It was all run out of Excel, which, that's slow. So, yeah, that was all
That's, I mean, so
fun to say.
basically you learned because you had to for this business that you kind of created, and then you started digging in deeper to the technical because it was the cheapest way. I would argue that a lot of what I learned too was like I couldn't afford to do things the other, like I couldn't afford a web designer. So like when I built my first website, I was like, okay, I need to learn this stuff. And like I couldn't
That's
afford a
exactly it.
computer.
Yes.
Yeah, so like I learned how to repair them when I found them in the trash. Like back in the day, and I'll date myself as usual. You could go into like a Circuit City trash can and like they would throw away brand new computers because like they didn't repair stuff back then ever. Like I mean I would find new laptops, new computers, and the RAM would be unseated. New TVs, you would just I learned how to do soldering work and got new TVs after replacing a 30-cent capacitor, and then I would
Well,
sell those.
pro tip that I learned while I was doing that company, because instead of dumpster diving, Amazon trucks get in car accidents. And all of those shipments, they just reship out of a new truck. So all of that stuff just goes to a massive buy a pallet of computers for a few $100. And so that's what I did.
Interesting. So you started this kind of quasi business. You were slinging car parts for a bit.
Oh,
How
it wasn't
how did
quasi. It was 10,000 in profit the first week
what? Why would you stop doing that? I mean, that's
because COVID happened and my margin dropped from 60% to 5%, and I was making less than I did as a pharmacy tech.
oh no.
Yeah,
So,
so I with the tariffs, I had custom parts that I was about to order in from Taiwan. What happens to Taiwan? They get a horrible outbreak, everything gets frozen, and
oh
all my
man.
money was tied up in this stuff that I couldn't touch until November of 2020 when I ordered it in February. Like
Oh wow.
it was
So
bad.
so
Luckily, my wife made 3 times what I made at the time, so
and you were all
it was
right. Yeah.
fine. All my goals in life have always been pay off the wife's student loans. It's a 250,000 in student loans to become a
Yeah, they
doctor of pharmacy. It's ridiculous.
I,
So,
I would argue a lot of degrees are ridiculous with it. I mean, my wife has a baccalaureate in elementary education, and it's like $100,000. Like it's just she could never make more than 35, 40 grand a year. Like, how do you ever get out of that situation? But I digress. I'm not a huge college fan,
me either.
primarily because it just sets people up for crippling debt forever. And I see very, very little gain long term unless you're very specialized, like your wife and things like that.
Let me spin the exception to this rule of
Sure.
colleges are awful. So I'm struggling my company. I had a lot of money tied up, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna hit the break even point and pull the plug. And by the way, I wasn't able to spin up this company so fast without a lot of prior experience. My dad sells big truck parts.
Mhm.
And I had helped him set up his online front and get that off the ground. And he had just moved into making a warehouse. And I'm like, why are you doing a warehouse when all the other warehouses already exist? Let me try and prove a point. And then COVID happened to prove the point for him that having a warehouse is the better option. So I could pull the plug comfortably there. Um, I had a friend who worked at University of Colorado, and they said, "Hey, we're going to spin up a cybersecurity apprenticeship program, and how would you like to be in the first cohort?" And I said, "I hate college. I never want to pay for it." And she said, "That's fine. Grants pay for it, full coverage." So, and I was like, "Well, I still need to make some money because the wife has student loans." I expected them to turn back on because they kept dangling that in front of our face every 2 months, that the loans will get kicked back on. So I'm like, so what do you have to do about that? Well, the apprenticeship will pay a certain amount. Well, um, push come to shove, it was enough for me to justify stopping everything and diving into that. And that program was several years, and I was able to work with um, the vice president and CISO of AAA Insurance, Gopal. He's wonderful. I was able to work with a senior member of Lockheed Martin, Derek. I was able to work with a person who was on the board at IC Squared. They were wonderful suite of knowledge and resources, and basically the training set was cybersecurity management. They wanted us all to be CISOs right out of school, which horrible idea, but I was able to write based on real examples with fictional names. I had to do um, live press reports. I had to do everything through the whole cybersecurity framework set from are you detecting the right things all the way to release of information. So it was the full breadth of the frameworks. So and we used multiple frameworks. So we were doing risk management framework, NIST, COBIT. We were trying to grab from different industries for different problems, with the central focus being insider threat because everyone seems to believe that insider threat's the biggest threat to a lot of these companies, and depending where you are, they're right. Uh, if you are in a more mature company, if you have any attack pattern, and if you're an insider threat, you've already bypassed getting initial credentials, getting privilege escalation. All you have to do is gather stuff and get it out. So it really is worth focusing on. Um, but yeah, it was a fun program. Before I even finished that, I had a friend who worked at Logarithm who said, "Hey, we have a job opening. How'd you like to go?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll go do an interview." Because I knew the person, I got to skip the first of four interviews. Um, and I like to tell this story because it goes to show you don't always have to have a perfect interview if you know somebody on the inside. Because boy, oh boy, I could not remember the acronym for DC for the life of me. And I had just gone over group policy orchestration, building out user profiles in Active Directory. I couldn't remember what a domain controller was to save my life.
I had a similar situation where I was working with a mentor of mine, and this is the job at Disney. I was kind of prepping for it, and he's peppering me with questions. And he finally was like, I'm nailing everything. And he goes, "Hey, what's a ghost IP address?" And I was like, he's like, "Do you know what it is?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And he goes, "Tell me." And I just went blank. And I was like, I I have no idea. And he goes, "Never do that again." He goes, "Luckily we were in a prep interview. It wasn't the live interview, but he's like, in cyber it's black or white. You've got to know what you don't know, and you need to know it immediately. And what you do know, you need to be very clear and defined on." And that was one of the earliest lessons for me in cyber because previously I would kind of my mind moves so fast that I'm already talking before I'm actually thinking, right? Like and because of my ADHD and my autism, like I have some serious problems with that I've had to really, really work on. And that was one lesson that I realized very quickly. He's 100% right. It's so important to take a bead and just wait and listen. So how did you handle not knowing domain controller? What did you say? Obviously you couldn't remember the word. You already had done well on answering the other stuff. You already kind of people knew who you were because you were given the opportunity. And this is something I try to tell a lot of people is like if you're looking to get into cyber, the way you do it is relationships now more than ever it's relationships because if I open like right now I have a role open. I have five people internal that are applying. I have probably close to eight people that I know that are applying. And then we're also looking at external resumes. For me, I'm very cognizant about I don't give anyone any sort of privilege, whether you're my mentee or whatever. I just say good luck to you. I don't let people go past the interview process. I don't do any of that because I was on the other side of that coin, like just struggling when I was unemployed. But nobody really does that. They do exactly what happened to you. And I mean, I would argue very similarly what happened to me at Disney is like I got an opportunity because I knew someone who knew someone to apply. So when you didn't know the answer, how did the rest of the like did it just derail the entire interview? Were you just uncomfortable? What happened?
So, I hate alphabet soup, and I tell
Hmm.
people that right off the bat that if you need me to memorize all of your abbreviations, I'm not going to be the right fit for you because um, DC could be a type of current in your walls, for all I know that you're talking about. But when it came to that interview, of course, I'm going to dial it back and be like, I feel like I know this, but it's not coming to me at the moment. Um, I'll write that down for the next interview. Please hit me with the next question for that. But I have to iterate how that interview opened with this stuff. It's a bit funny. So Logarithm, if you're not familiar with it, is a um, security information and event management system, but they don't pronounce it SEAM like everyone else. And there's a good reason for it. I used to teach the product, and I'll get into that in a minute. But the first question that they had was an obvious question. Um, so tell me what you know about a sim. I'm like, what do you mean, like a simulation? I had got taught that it's SEAM, and the reason for that is because Splunk won the brand war, right? They were originally an SEM, a security event management system. And so they just carried through. It's a SEAM with a little extra spice of information in there. Well, Logarithm started as an SIM, a security incident management system. And they added events after the fact. So they wanted to just be known as a SIM. Um, because I asked that clarifying question, like a simulation, they're like, no, the tool that we sell. And I'm like, oh, a seam. I've heard it as seam. Sorry for the miscommunication there. Um, yeah, it gets to be awkward in these interviews, especially tripping over little things. You can't let the one thing bog you down. If you can't make a joke of like how I don't know how my brain skipped a beat there. You're going to struggle in the interviews, and not every company is going to be as forgiving. Because I had a 5 interview um, application with a company when I was laid off over a year ago, and it was challenging. Down to they expected me to do 9 hours of work and turn it into them, which I will never do for a company ever again, unless it's for a C-suite job. It's not happening.
They asked me to do that too when I was unemployed multiple times for C-suite jobs, right? Executive type
Yeah,
jobs and CISO roles. They were like, write out our entire security plan, write out this. And I said, no. I said, I'll write it based on fictitious information, but I will not write it based on your current problems because you're just going to steal my ideas, period,
yeah,
right? And there's a lot of people, a lot of companies specifically that, especially small startups, that will do this. They will say, "Hey, write up 9 hours, do this," or that my favorite are the coding interviews, right? Oh,
yeah.
hey, go build this solution. And then you build it and they're like, "Oh, sorry, we went with somebody else." Then all of a sudden it's a new product that they have to offer, a month later.
Yep. And that's why you should always, if you're not already working for the company, copyright your work. So, um, gosh, just win the business battle there. Um, but yeah, that was how I got into cyber. It's long, it's messy. It was not anything like I expected. But I came out the gate swinging. Logarithm had a 90-day onboarding because that sim is crazy. It has all sorts of stuff in it. Um, and my first month live as a troubleshooting engineer for the sim, I broke all their records. I got a trophy my first month. So,
But did they give you a trophy for breaking
yeah, I
something?
have a glass trophy. I know the audio people can't see it, but yeah, uh, top. customer satisfaction, and I had the second most closes, which is saying something since I started 3 weeks late into the quarter. So it was,
I thought they celebrated your failure. I was like, I love all of that. That
that
would
would have
have
been
been
great
the.
too. No, I did very well. Actually, at the sim, they tried to promote me twice in the first year, which you can't promote in the same department twice. So they moved me laterally over to training and enablement, where I did some of my most proud work in cyber. I taught Bahrain Polytechnic University, which, if you're not familiar with the country, that university is basically their whole government. So um, they were wonderful, first off. And then I did a lot of work with Egypt, Latin America, hablo español, but I don't speak Spanish and computer. That's a whole other language.
Well, I find it interesting. I've seen a lot of my mentees and different people kind of going into the education space as kind of that stopgap in between finding an opportunity or finding a job. I know several mentees that now teach at like three or four different schools and are bringing home two, $300,000 a year. Sure, I mean they're killing themselves, and they have a game plan to get out of it in 2 years, and they're still continuing to look. But I've realized that there's a very low bar to entry for who becomes a teacher for cyber. Um, it's basically like, hey, do you have your CISSP or do you know stuff and did you finish college or have a degree? Um, you just kind of came out of it. You've been doing, you know, a lot of self-taught cyber work. Like, what made them think that you would be a good teacher? What do you think makes you a good teacher?
So to clarify, wasn't a teacher at like a university. I taught a university set of professors. I worked for Logarithm. I taught the
Interesting.
professional services team, all of their customers, and all their incoming new people on the full suite of Logarithm, which involved how to write regex, advanced threat hunting, developing rules, what detections to put in place, how to build dashboards. I essentially was teaching how to build a SOC from nothing. Very simple, but all the basics that you'd need to do. And these were not short, these were 8 hours a full month, 8 hours a day, a full week for a full month just to get the full program, and I had to teach it ad nauseum. So, um,
So, I mean, since you got into cyber, you're early, that first gig with Logarithm, what
yeah.
was work-life balance like? Like, how many hours were you working? Were you working from home? What was that like?
So it was remote work, really nice. I'm built a little different. I very much am a give me my KPI and mean it, because I will knock it out as fast as possible, as well as possible, and then that's it. So my KPI at the time was 12 ticket closures in a week, and I didn't do basic little tickets. I went into the advanced topics that people were afraid to touch because if I did basic little tickets, somebody would gripe on me for something. So I self-taught on they call it AI engine. It's not artificial intelligence, it's advanced intelligence with machine learning. Um, I mastered that and closed out 12 tickets in 2 days on average. And that meant for the rest of the week, I'm checking emails, making sure things are good. And it was pretty cake. When it came to being an instructor at Logarithm, it was also really nice. They did a 3 weeks teaching, 1 week you log in, check your emails, but they wanted you to learn something else outside of Logarithm, which made I got a lot of certificates. I learned a lot of tools really fast. If you don't, I know you know, but for the people listening, if you don't know a seam, they have to integrate into pretty much every cyber tool that produces a log that exists. And so I have configured. and wired up over 100 different unique products to a sim in my time. So I have a lot of very broad exposure there, and it's a little bit of that T shape that everyone's looking for. You have broad coverage, and then you're real deep in something. And for me, it was always vulnerability management and building out rules. So.
So, I mean, looking at your history over the last, I would say decade or so, you've really started to focus more and more in the cyberspace. I noticed for a little bit when you were laid off, you were really heavy on LinkedIn. You were posting regularly, you were doing, writing a lot of articles. Did you see that as beneficial when you were unemployed, or, did that lead to your current opportunity?
So, beneficial to my brand image. So every company is going to want you to link to your LinkedIn in their application forms. Did the job that did I get that from LinkedIn? No. I basically, I went the full 6 months, and it was a horrible, horrible 6 months. Colorado had a problem with people hacking unemployment, and so my unemployment got hacked. Um, and I'd never been unemployed before. So I applied for it 10 days after I actually got laid off. Um, and it was already too late. And it's like, how did they get my information? Well, I don't know. Every company that I've ever worked for has had a breach. So um, that, that sort of thing. But yeah, I didn't get any unemployment money until my 11th week. So I was in panic mode. I tried to make sure that the time mattered. So my first month, I the the third day that I was laid off, I put on the calendar CISSP. I went and booked it. I bought myself the all-in-one CISSP book and read it cover to cover. I did all the tests, practice tests, showed up, did the test, passed. A week later, I attended a local trainer who teaches PMP, and I did that class, and at the end of the week on that Friday, I took the PMP and passed. If you are in another country that isn't the United States, that's two master's level certifications in 2 weeks. So it was pure buckled down focus and desperation at that point. After that,
Hundreds and hundreds of hours of study and nothing else. Was that a
yes,
survival technique? I mean, I know for me, I got super depressed when I was laid off because I just felt worthless and just felt like I was kind of garbage when I was on. I'd never been unemployed since I was like, homeless, living in the streets. I'd never not had a job. So it was a surreal experience for me. Did you feel very similar?
um, I didn't understand, and I feel so bad for my previous manager because I messaged him all the time, and him being a good manager, good corporate person, doesn't want any liability back going back to the company. He never gave me any reasoning for why I was let go. Like I said, I trained everybody. I wrote the troubleshooting manual,
Yeah.
300
It,
pages for logarithm.
so
I
many times nobody knows, right?
Right.
I've gone through now 12 career reorgs, and I've even done it now at the executive level. You just don't know. You'll never know why you were let go, which is probably the most infuriating thing.
I know why now. They were gearing up and positioning themselves for a buyout, which absolutely makes sense. Logarithm originally got bought by a broker that flips tech companies. So they bought it with the intent to flip it. They had a whole stable of CEOs. So if you go into a company that has CEOs that switch every 2 years, chances are you're probably in one of those little meat grinders. So what ended up happening is they got sold and bought out by Exabeam over this last summer, and I thought I was safe because there were already two layoffs before I got laid off. So it
Right.
was,
So So, how did you end up landing this new gig? Was it something from the classes or from the certs? Like, what do you think gave you that kind of competitive advantage?
So I got desperate, stopped looking on LinkedIn because I had applied to everything that had an easy apply button. And if it didn't, I set a goal of 20 a day. Custom resumes, custom cover letters, 20 a day. Over 400 custom applications. It was terrible. Um, I go to Colorado Workforce Center. Oh, it was Pikes Peak at the time. And I found a job that I was like, yeah, I check all these boxes. Turns out it was a government job. And I checked all the boxes, which guaranteed an interview. I had one interview and had a job.
It's so funny because I don't think people realize government jobs are different from every other job because if you meet the qualifications, they legally have to interview you. Like it is, in order for them to continue to get funding, they have to interview each person who applied, who meets the qualifications. So I always tell people if you're able to get a government gig that has a TS clearance, and I looked at your LinkedIn and I see that you have an NDA and most likely a TS clearance because you're with Eris. I'm not going to ask you about your gig because you can't talk about it. But what I can tell people listening is if you have an opportunity to get in with a government gig, do so. That the amount of people who can actually apply for those roles and actually get them is incredibly, incredibly small. And it gives you a much higher advantage than a lot of people who are just in the market normally, right? So even if we'll say 500 people apply, probably less than 5% actually meet the qualifications, and then they have to interview those people. So that's awesome.
We have another half of that though. So um I can't talk about my clearance and who
No, that's
sponsors it,
fine.
any of that. But what
I'm
I
just
can
assuming.
say Yeah, what I can say is if you have a clearance, so you're coming in from the military. If you have a clearance, it costs more to get you a clearance than it does for you to, spend 6 months studying and get a security plus.
Yep.
They would
Um,
rather hire you now with a clearance and let you get those check boxes of
yep.
certifications than get somebody who has the certification is a risk to get cleared and then suddenly have to drop you because you didn't know
Yeah.
your sister ran a drug ring or something.
Well, we've got about 1 minute left. What's the advice that you can kind of give to new people or people trying to pivot, that you think you wish you would have had kind of going into it?
Talk to everyone. Everyone has a different story. Everyone has different experiences. I used Cyber Mentor Dojo. I met a lot of mentors who are in a lot of different niches in cyber, and every single one of their insights has been valuable.
Yeah, well,
It's
I think that's the thing a lot of people don't realize is it doesn't matter who you're talking to, there is always something valuable that you can get. Whether the person is a janitor or a guy selling Cheeros, each one of them has their own insights and value that they can bring to a conversation that you just would have never thought of.
I know a janitor who was on my cyber team. So yes, this
Exactly.
is accurate.
No, no, I mean, and that's one of the things that I want everyone listening is you don't have to do things the traditional way. I didn't, Eric didn't, a lot of people, Carla from last week's podcast didn't. You can figure out ways to get into this field by doing things your own way, by doing things your own unique way. And I really hope you keep trying and keep putting things out there. As you heard Eric's story, it took several years, but the end, he's got a great gig. He enjoys what he does, and he's got a lot of cyber experience to show for it. Definitely check him out on LinkedIn. He shares a lot of great content. Eric, thank you so much for your time. I truly
It was a
appreciate it.
pleasure, and I listened to your podcast. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy. Have a good one.